Welcome back, it's me, Lou. Today we are going to talk about do-it-yourself lightsabers. Alright, so last night I couldn't sleep and I was doom scrolling through Instagram and something just kept on popping up, and it was the $30 Home Depot lightsaber. Alright, so apparently building your own lightsaber using parts at Home Depot is a thing. I guess it's a new hot trend that's going around, especially with Star Wars fans. It's nothing new. People have been doing this, since the first movie. I actually made one way back in 2015, and seeing all these posts just made me really nostalgic for my own lightsaber. So I went digging around and I actually found it. So what we have here is my own do-it-yourself lightsaber that I made 11 years ago. Much like the trend that's going on today, this was assembled mostly using pieces from the hardware store, and we're talking about stuff you'd find in the plumbing aisle. So we're going to talk about this today. Unfortunately, I'm not going to provide like a full tutorial on how to make this. If anything, we're just going to talk about lightsaber aesthetic, my specific design, and hopefully it'll inspire you to create one of your own. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so let's talk about do-it-yourself lightsabers. All right, so like I stated at the beginning of the video, I was up late at night just doom scrolling through Instagram, and I was just bombarded with post after post with Star Wars fans showing off their $30 Home Depot lightsaber. And just seeing those posts just made me so nostalgic for my own lightsaber that when I woke up this morning, I went hunting around to see if I could find mine. And I did. I have it right here. This is my do-it-yourself lightsaber that I made 11 years ago back in 2015. So when I made it at the time, I think The Force Awakens was coming out, and I was going to cosplay as an X-Wing pilot, and I kind of felt the need that, that I need some sort of accessory besides the costume, and I'm like, what better iconic prop than a lightsaber? So I designed my own lightsaber, and combing around online, I saw a bunch of different tutorials on how to assemble one using plumbing pieces that you'd find at the hardware store. So I did that. I just grabbed everything that looked cool, and then I went home and kind of pieced it together. But this was actually my second or third attempt. My first attempt, I wasn't really happy with it. It was much too large. It's probably about 2 inches larger than this one right here. It was kind of out of proportion, and it didn't really look like an authentic lightsaber. It kind of looked like someone went nuts at like Home Depot and just made one out of plumbing pieces, which this is really made of. But it forced me to go back and make a lot of design changes because aesthetically I wanted it to feel like it belonged in the Star Wars universe. And I kind of think that's the challenge in making your own lightsaber. Of course, you could easily just pattern one after an existing lightsaber, whether it's Ki-Adi-Mundi, Obi-Wan, Luke, or if you want to even dig into like the expanded universe and build a lightsaber from like a EU character, you could do that. But for me, I kind of wanted this to feel like, like Luke Skywalker in the deleted scene of Return of the Jedi when he's making his own lightsaber. I think that's one of the cool things with this project is that it really empowers the user to feel like a Jedi when they're crafting their own weapon. And I think there's nothing cooler than that. Of course, they have those experiences like at the theme park where you can build your own lightsaber and whatnot. But I think there's just something cool when you can scratch build it from everyday pieces, much like they did for the original film. So we're going to talk about my lightsaber here. I don't unfortunately have like a parts list. Like I said, when I built this 11 years ago, I just went into the plumbing aisle and I just grabbed every little doodad that looked pretty neat. And then when I got home, I just kind of it's almost like playing with Legos. You kind of assemble it in a way that, or at least in a way that I thought would look aesthetically pleasing. And again, this was probably my second or third attempt. My first attempt, it looked horrible. But then I dug out some of my Star Wars books, like the visual dictionaries and whatnot. And I just kind of looked at different lightsaber designs and kind of paid attention to what are the important pieces in a lightsaber. For example, when you design a lightsaber, of course, you need a mouth here. This is where the blade is emitted from, for the laser sword. You also need some sort of ignition switch, to activate the lightsaber, which I have right here, this red button. And then this little dial here, some lightsabers have it, is to be able to control the length of your beam. So I kind of figured those are the three important things I needed. I wanted a really cool looking mouth, I needed an ignition switch, and I really wanted the dial. In terms of the color scheme, for me, I wanted to go for classic chrome. I think chrome is really the look for like a classic looking lightsaber. Also, I kind of wanted to have a good amount of black on it also, because whenever I think of lightsabers, I always think of like, the handle of the hilt is always going to be black, and there's going to be some sort of black trim on there. For example, here is Darth Vader's lightsaber. This one's a toy lightsaber produced by Hasbro. This is one of those $10 lightsabers, which, if you ask me, it's a steal. There's actually a blade that comes out of it. It's over here. It retracts in and out, but you kind of have to like swoosh it out, but then it goes back in. So you can either make your own lightsaber for $30, or you can just buy one for $9. But I think the fun in building your own lightsaber is just that. You built it yourself. It's your own signature lightsaber, much like a real Jedi Knight or a Sith Lord. So here's Vader's lightsaber. And like I talked about in terms of the color scheme, for this one, or at least a toy, instead of chrome, it's kind of like a metallic silver. And there's a good amount of black on the hilt, and I feel that makes it look very iconic. So I kind of wanted to do the same with mine. I kind of wanted to give it maybe like a ratio of maybe like 50% black, 50% chrome. And then size-wise also, I'm not sure if this toy prop is accurate to the real studio model, but mine is somewhat within the same ballpark in terms of the length and also in terms of the diameter. So I think that's something you need to keep in mind also when you design your lightsaber is proportion. You don't want to make one that looks too skinny. You don't want to make your hilt look too long or too short unless you're aiming for like a Master Yoda lightsaber hilt. And for mine, I kind of designed mine in thirds. Like 1/3 of the length is the bottom half, or is the bottom third here, and that's going to be black. And then the other third is going to be primarily chrome, which is the center. And then the final third is the upper top with the ignition switch and then the mouth. And then I'd like to think that maybe the kyber crystal is stored, within the bottom of the handle. So yeah, this is kind of my lightsaber. Aesthetically, I wanted it to look classic. Nothing too outrageous. I wanted this to feel like it belonged in the Star Wars universe. I even gave it a small little ring here so I can hang it off my belt. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you my design. Like I said, I hope this provides some sort of inspiration. Whether you're making your own design or if you're using a pre-existing one, there's just important things to keep in mind. The size of it, the proportions, and most of all, whether or not you're happy with it. For me, I'd like to think if I was a Jedi Knight, this is my signature lightsaber. There's no other design like this, but my own. And don't limit yourself to pieces you find only at the hardware store. Also, for me, I'm really into BMX, so I have a lot of BMX parts from my bicycles, and I try to incorporate some of those pieces onto here. For example, I capped the bottom with a headset cap right here, which I think was a 1-inch diameter one. And then there are these plastic pieces here, which I believe I got off an old shelving unit. And then to adjust the blade adjuster here, this was taken off of a bicycle brake lever. This is the brake cable barrel adjuster. So yeah, lots of fun and a lot of good times building this. So if you're going to build your own lightsaber, my first words of advice are keep it cheap. $30 seems like a lot for a lightsaber. Dig around your house first. You never know what you can find in your garage or even in your kitchen. You might be able to find maybe some sort of doweling or a rod or even pipe that you can use to make it. Also, if you're a little one and you have to work with tools, make sure you have some supervision from an adult or someone that knows what they're doing. So like for me, for example, when I first made my lightsaber, it was too long, so I wanted to shorten it down. So in order to do that, I had to use a pipe cutter to get it to the right length that I wanted it. And then I think outside of that, I might have used an Allen wrench or a wrench, for this piece here. I used a drill bit to drill out the plastic so I could tap the barrel adjuster over there. So yeah, I think the more handy you are with tools, the better the result can be. You don't want to make anything that looks too, like thrown together. Like stay away from using duct tape. And if you happen to use screws, try to keep them hidden. I'd suggest maybe going for, Allen screws as opposed to like Phillips or crossheads, just because, once you see it, it kind of pulls you out of that reality. But yeah, have fun with it. If you want to make it a pink lightsaber, go for it. But yeah, it's a cool little thing. And if you happen to make a lightsaber, leave a comment down below or some sort of link where I can see it, because I'd really love to see what everyone's doing nowadays with these DIY lightsabers. All right, so let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of crap, and most of all, be happy. And may the Force be with you. All right, I'll talk to you later. Later.